We are all familiar with the headlines. Japan's lost decades. A story of stagnation. The aging society. The narrative presented to the outside world is often one-dimensional, a simple tale of demographic decline and mild deflation. It's a story told through graphs and percentages, a clinical post-mortem of an economic miracle that simply faded away. But this surface-level diagnosis misses the profound, complex reality. Japan's economic challenge is not a single, monolithic problem. It is not merely that the population is growing older. The true story is far more intricate and far more instructive. It is a story of interconnected, systemic pressures, deeply embedded within the very structures of society and business, that have quietly conspired to constrain growth, suppress vitality, and create a self-reinforcing cycle of caution and contraction. This is not an obituary for an economy. It is an investigation into a silent struggle. A struggle fought not on the floors of stock exchanges, but in the countless offices, boardrooms, and households where the subtle, unspoken rules of engagement have created a powerful inertia. What we see as economic outcomes are merely the symptoms. The causes lie in 5 fundamental areas. One, the productivity paradox, the system of inefficiency. On the surface, Japan is a paradigm of efficiency. Its manufacturing keiretsu are marvels of logistical precision, its bullet trains synonymous with punctuality. Yet, when measured by output per hour worked, Japan's productivity languishes at the bottom of the G7 rankings. This is the central contradiction, the productivity paradox. How can a nation so dedicated to perfection be so inefficient? The answer lies not on the factory floor, but in the vast, sprawling landscape of its service sector and white-collar offices. Here, efficiency is not measured in output, but in input. The currency of dedication is not results, but time. This has fostered a culture where process often trumps outcome, and where the appearance of hard work is valued more highly than the work itself. The most damaging manifestation of this is the entrenched practice of widespread unpaid overtime, known as zangyo. This is not merely staying late to finish a project. It is a systemic expectation. Employees remain at their desks for hours after their formal work is complete, a visible signal of their commitment to the company. The economic impact of this is devastating. It acts as a massive hidden tax on wages, effectively depressing hourly pay. It burns out the workforce, sapping creativity and initiative. Most critically, it eliminates any incentive to work smarter or faster. Why develop a more efficient method to complete your tasks in 6 hours if you are culturally mandated to remain physically present for 10? This inertia is compounded by a startling technological stagnation at the operational level. While Japan produces cutting-edge technology for export, its domestic office culture remains stubbornly anchored in the past. The reliance on fax machines, physical hanko personal stamps for approval, and paper-based filing systems creates a bureaucratic drag of immense proportions. A simple decision that could be made in an instant via email or a digital workflow can take days, waiting for physical documents to be stamped, signed, and handed off through multiple layers of management. This leads to the final pillar of the paradox, the consensus-driven decision-making model. The practice of neima washi, laying the groundwork for a decision through informal discussions, ensures buy-in, but at the cost of agonizing slowness. It creates a vertical hierarchy where innovation from junior employees is stifled under the weight of approval chains. The ecosystem is designed to minimize risk and maintain harmony, but in a global economy that rewards speed and agility, this aversion to risk becomes the greatest risk of all. The result is an economy that harnesses the immense talent and diligence of its people, only to funnel it into systems that are meticulously designed to waste it. 2. The labor market duality. The two-tiered workforce, Japan's famed post-war economic model, was built on the promise of lifetime employment, a symbiotic relationship where a company offered security in exchange for an employee's unwavering loyalty. That system still exists, but only for a privileged and shrinking core. Beneath it, a second precarious tier of the workforce has expanded to encompass nearly 40% of all employees. This is the world of the Hisei Koyo, the non-regular worker. This fundamental duality between secure, well-compensated regular employees and an army of part-time temporary and contract workers is not just a social issue. It is a primary driver of economic stagnation. It has created a permanent underclass of consumers with severely constrained purchasing power. The wage gap is staggering. A non-regular worker often earns 60% less than a regular employee doing the same job. This has a direct and powerful dampening effect on domestic consumption, which accounts for over half of Japan's GDP. You cannot build a robust consumer-driven economy when a large portion of your workforce lacks the financial security to spend. Furthermore, companies have little to no incentive to invest in the training or skill development of their temporary staff. Why pour resources into an employee who may not be with you next month? This leads to a long-term systemic hollowing out of human capital. Skills are not nurtured, expertise is not deepened, and the overall quality of the workforce gradually erodes. This isn't just a loss for those individual workers. It is a loss of national competitive advantage. Finally, this system creates a looming fiscal time bomb. Non-regular positions often come with limited benefits, unstable hours, and poor contributions to pension schemes. This shifts a future burden directly onto the state, ensuring that the current crisis of weak domestic demand will be followed by a future crisis of inadequate retirement savings and increased strain on social services. The two-tiered system offers short-term flexibility for corporations, but at the long-term cost of suppressed consumption, a de-skilled populace, and a guaranteed escalation of public debt. 3. The globalization gap, the innovation isolation. In the late 1980s, Japan was not just competing with the world, it seemed poised to own it. Brands like Sony, Toyota, and Panasonic were household names across the globe. But as the world economy accelerated into a new era of digital globalization, many Japanese corporations faltered. They fell victim to what is known locally as Garapagosu-ka, the Galapagos syndrome. The syndrome describes a phenomenon where a domestic ecosystem evolves in such unique isolation that it becomes incompatible with the global standard. Japanese companies developed incredibly advanced and innovative products, from internet-enabled mobile phones to digital entertainment systems, that were perfectly tailored to the exacting demands of the Japanese consumer. But this very perfection, this inward focus, made them uncompetitive abroad. They were too different, too complex, or simply too unfamiliar for global markets. This was compounded by a deeply insular corporate culture. Unlike American or European multinationals that aggressively globalized their management teams and boards, Japanese firms kept decision-making and leadership intensely domestic. Foreign executives were rarely, if ever, integrated into the core decision-making structures. This created a critical blind spot, an inability to understand and adapt to consumer tastes, business practices, and regulatory environments outside of Japan. The consequence is that Japan largely missed the last two major waves of technological innovation: the software revolution and the platform economy. It dominated hardware, but ceded the operating systems, social media platforms, and search engines that came to define the modern era. The country that invented the emoji and advanced mobile internet found itself building products for its own isolated ecosystem, while the iPhone and Android conquered the world with a standardized global approach. This failure to globalize its innovations has cost Japan incalculable wealth, market influence, and the ability to set global technological trends, leaving its economy reliant on manufacturing prowess in a world increasingly dominated by intangible assets and software. 4. The corporate gerontocracy. The hoarding of capital Japanese corporations are not poor. In fact, they are famously cash-rich, sitting on a massive hoard of internal reserves amounting to hundreds of trillions of yen. This mountain of capital represents a profound failure of allocation and a deep-seated aversion to risk that permeates the highest levels of corporate leadership. A significant part of the problem is generational. Corporate Japan is run by a gerontocracy, a leadership class that is among the oldest in the developed world. CEOs and board members are typically promoted from within based on seniority and tenure, not vision or disruptive thinking. Their primary goal is not growth or innovation, but stability and the preservation of the company's legacy. This is a management philosophy of defense, not offense. This risk-averse mindset is coupled with a long-standing cultural aversion to prioritizing shareholder returns. For decades, the concept of maximizing shareholder value was viewed with suspicion, seen as a short-sighted, Western concept that undermined the company's duty to its employees and society. While this fostered stability, it also led to a system where hoarding cash was seen as the safest strategy. Returning capital to shareholders through dividends or buybacks, or investing it in risky new ventures, was deemed irresponsible. The result is that capital, the lifeblood of any dynamic economy, is frozen on corporate balance sheets. It is not being invested in research and development at the scale needed to compete globally. It is not being used to acquire innovative startups or to venture into new industries. It is not being returned to the market to be recycled and reinvested into more dynamic sectors. This corporate sclerosis, the preference for hoarding over deploying capital, represents a massive drag on national growth, ensuring that the old guard is protected while the future is starved of investment. 5. The demographic doom loop, the culmination. All these factors converge into a final, overwhelming pressure, the demographic shift. But to view Japan's aging and shrinking population as a standalone cause of economic struggle is to misunderstand it completely. It is not the cause, it is the culmination. It is the final stage in a self-reinforcing economic doom loop, where every other problem makes this one worse, and this problem in turn exacerbates all the others. The cycle is vicious and clear. The stagnant wages and limited opportunities created by the dual labor market make starting a family a daunting financial prospect for young people. The relentless hours of the productivity paradox leave little time or energy for raising children. This leads to a chronically low birth rate, far below what is needed to sustain the population. The resulting demographic decline, a smaller workforce supporting a growing number of retirees, then shrinks the domestic consumer market and puts immense strain on public finances, necessitating higher future taxes or cuts to services. Anticipating this stagnant and shrinking domestic market, the risk-averse corporate gerontocracy doubles down on its caution, refusing to invest aggressively or raise wages. This returns us to the start of the loop. Stagnant wages and a lack of opportunity, which further suppresses the birth rate. The loop closes and the cycle continues, each rotation deepening the economic inertia. Japan's silent economic struggle is therefore not a mystery. It is a predictable outcome of a series of interlocking systemic issues. The productivity paradox wastes the nation's immense human potential. The dual labor market suppresses the consumption and skill development necessary for growth. The globalization gap has cost Japan its place at the forefront of innovation and global relevance. The corporate gerontocracy has frozen the capital needed to fuel a dynamic recovery.